Trinity. I am sitting on the front steps of the church. I'm enjoying this beautiful golden hour, and I'm thinking about the book of Nehemiah, our practice of prayer, and I want to invite you to pray along with the vestry and pray about this particular season in our lives together. So the book of Nehemiah is just a little bit after our Sunday readings in Samuel in the Hebrew Bible. And Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king, and the people of his time, that's a character reference. It signals that he's really trustworthy because he is in a position to keep the king from being poisoned, or he's in a position to poison the king. So that's their way of signaling, hey, listen to this guy, he's really trustworthy. He asks a friend, I think it says brethren, he asks a brethren, about how it is to be one of the Jewish people who have survived the Babylonian deportation, the Babylonian exile. And he hears that the Jewish people who survived the deportation and exile are in great trouble and great shame. He prays for their restoration, and then he goes to serve God in this purpose in Jerusalem. It is the word that comes to mind is gnarly. I don't know. I don't surf. It's a really gnarly book. It contains one of the weirdest architectural assessments or burns in the Bible. One of the enemies of the Israelites says if a fox were to go up and down that wall, it would break down. How many foxes do you see on walls? Anyway, Nehemiah is a book about community restoration. Now we see where this is going. It's about community restoration in ways that are material, religious, and social. It's about rebuilding the walls and the gates of Jerusalem, gathering the community around scripture, and reordering the life of the community. I don't really want to draw a direct parallel between the Babylonian deportation and exile and the COVID pandemic, particularly around causes. That's dubious, but I think we can hear the spiritual effects. The people are troubled. I feel like I have read dozens of think pieces about how we're all feeling in this particular season of the pandemic. I don't say think pieces to make light of it. I'm having a wonky time. Maybe you are too. As always, tell me if I'm the only one. Reading think pieces, feeling it in myself, and just hearing it a bunch of different ways, culturally and relationally. So, the people were in great trouble and shame, his friend tells him. I hear shame as what could I have done? Could have done more, could have done better. Should I be feeling down? Should I be feeling energized? Great trouble speaks for itself. Loneliness, frustration, miscommunications, and hopefully more chances for honesty. I was thinking about a question, and I realized, a church question, I was realizing that I was trying to pull the strategy lever instead of the feelings lever to solve the problem. I also think there's just a lot of grief in this too. I think we are still reckoning with some big life changes. And speaking of grief, thing that somebody told me that is just annoyingly accurate is if you don't deal with your grief will deal with you. So, as a priest, I'm always thinking about community restoration. And now I'm thinking about how COVID grief is playing into this. Back to Nehemiah. He says 3 words of encouragement to the people as attackers surround the walls, as the work is heavy to do, and he says this: remember the Lord. Remember the Lord. I hear that for us as remember that we have God's grace, we can hear God's purpose, and we can spread God's love and God's joy. And one way that we can do this communally is to pray. We had a vestry prayer meeting before church on Sunday. I asked our vestry to pray through 9 questions. Just 9. Asked our vestry to pray through 9 questions. Some of us met at church to pray silently together before the service. Others prayed wherever they were, and I'm hoping that you will pray with us too. Pray however feels right to you. Here are the questions. I want to hear what you hear from God. I want to hear what comes to mind. Message, call, email, better yet, talk to me in person. 9 questions. All right. 1. How can we invite and welcome members of the congregation back to or into a deeper relationship with God through the church in this pandemic season? How can we do it? Who can help us? 2. What should we know about what has changed for us, for parishioners over the past year or so? Change in family, change in work, change in schedule, diagnoses. 3. Is there anyone disappointed? Is there anyone that we have neglected or unknowingly, accidentally hurt that we need to seek repair with? 4. What loneliness, what questions of health, mental, physical, are we not contending with? What fears are we listening to? What fears are we leaving unspoken? How are we contending with these fears? 6. What new hopes have surfaced in this congregation that we can be responsive to? 7. How are we rejoicing and reconnecting with those who have returned? How are we welcoming newcomers and incorporating them in? Oh, I added another question. It's not 9. I can count. Sorry, I added another one. All right. These 2 are drawing from this Sunday's reading in Ephesians 4. What comforts can the church offer? How can we make that comfort known? What is the breadth and length and height and depth of the love of Christ that surpasses all knowledge? And finally, how are we discerning a vision for ministry ahead according to God's vision beyond what we can ask or imagine? Trinity, thanks be to God for you. Thanks be to God for the ways that we can pray together and that we can listen and we can hear God together. Love you.